Welcome to Get Ready for the Dress. This is Coach J. I am so excited to have you here with me, going through this journey. We're going to laugh, we're going to cry, we're going to have fun right here in this safe space, empowering each other, inspiring, elevating. We're going to grow together right here. Whatever dress you may be facing, you're getting ready for. It could be a marriage, it could be a divorce, it could be singleness, whatever it is, we're going to experience it together. So thank you for joining me at Get Ready for the Dress.
Sure, thank you. So let me just first thank you for allowing me to share with you today on your podcast. I'm really excited for you, and thank you for the inspiration that you are actually offering to us. So I wanted to just start with that. But my name is Lisa Cook, Dr. Lisa Cook. I am a licensed professional counselor, a certified professional life coach. I work currently as a regional operations director in a managed care behavioral health field. I am a single mom of one daughter, and I'm really grateful to be able to have the opportunity to talk about my book tonight. And so the name of my book is Coming Out: How to Reclaim Your Power and Live Your Authentic Truth to Create Life Impact. This book came out of a place of internal struggle and pain, and trying to find the answers to what I needed to do in my life. I was heavily involved in church and really active in teaching and ministry, and a lot of things like that. Raising my daughter by myself, really was seeking to disciple her as a young lady of Christ, and we had a traumatic experience happen at the church that really forced me, I think, to look within myself because of the pain of the whole situation. It really forced me to come back and look at Lisa. My book, I open up in the introduction, I talk about an animal that I felt like offered symbolism to my life up until I started reflecting and writing my book, and it was the zebra. Because in my mind as a child, just all through my life, whenever I saw zebras, I found them to be fascinating because when you look at them, they're always running in a pack, they're always moving forward, and they seem to run and with such ease and freedom. And for me, that was I think a secret desire that I had is just be able to have this freedom and run forward. But I was very busy in my life, and I think I was running in my life. I was doing a lot of movement, but I wasn't really working on myself. And so one of the things that I open up the book and I talk about is I was doing a lot of running from, but I wasn't running to me. I wasn't running to Lisa. And so this book is a opportunity for anyone to look at themselves and run to themselves and really be able to come to authentic truth of who they are, who God created them to be. Also, it is really about looking at, I think many of us operate in our lives based off of our life traumas or our life past experiences. And it's really an opportunity to become unstuck in that and to be able to be who God created us versus who we have become because of a situation, because of trauma. And so I opened the book up because I really feel like it's important for us to honor and value our voice, to have that authentic voice of who we are that I think has been misplaced because of circumstances in our lives, to become our truest and best selves. And so I talk about that honor and value and life impact as being some important things to strive as individuals in our lives. I really believe that in our world, because everybody is trying to be like somebody, everybody is trying to, if you look at social media, if you look at entertainment, if you look at just, and even in any community, we're always trying to assimilate ourselves to someone else or to something. And I think we have lost the view of being authentic who we are. We have lost the view of walking in our power and honoring and valuing our own voices. And it doesn't mean that we might not have similarities with other people. It just means that we are something unique that God created. And I think a lot of times because of life, because of the pressure to conform to norms of society, that we lost sight of who we're supposed to be. We lost our voice. We lost our ability to be authentic and walk in our power. And so, out of that thought, that principle, that mindset, out of my own personal trauma and pain, I wrote this book. And so I hope to help others be able to walk in their truth, walk in their authenticity, and to walk in their power. I am, as I mentioned, a licensed professional counselor. And one of the things when I was going through my graduate program that they talked to us about, they felt like it's important for therapists to have therapy. And so I'm a very big proponent of making sure you have self-help, to have self-awareness. And so whether it's through individual therapy or group or support groups or books you read or just a good circle of friends or whatever it is in your life, I believe in self-help or getting help through those type of venues. And so during this process, after I mentioned the situation with my church and kind of moving from that space with that community, I started a support group that introduced me, which I was familiar with, but not so much, the Serenity Prayer. And I wrote in my book something called the 4A Principles, and it's kind of birthed out of my acquaintances with the Serenity Prayer. Most people in the recovery movement will know this prayer: God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, the wisdom of the difference. At first glance, this seems like a very, just simple prayer. You recite it, maybe it means nothing to many people. But as I was going through writing my book and my coming out process, this prayer helped me birth what I call, again, the 4A principles, which is awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and action. Because if you take the serenity prayer and you break down some of those key words: serenity, the state of being calm, the state of being peaceful and untroubled, acceptance, the action of accepting or receiving something, and courage, the ability to do something that frightens you. I think oftentimes we forget that when we take a step forward to change ourselves, it takes courage, whether it's an internal issue, whether it's just a diet, whatever it is, it's a change, and it takes courage and then wisdom, the quality of attaining knowledge and experience and learning from that and using good judgment. So this book talks about these 4A principles that I believe that help guide the process and kind of the foundation. And so the first one is awareness, is really being willing to see the truth, being willing to tell yourself the truth, to see the truth in your own life. Oftentimes, I think because we have blind spots because of what we've been through, because we kind of operate out of our trauma, we operate out of our past, we operate if we're stuck. If we're not stuck, that's different. But if we are stuck, this book talks about that, being willing to see the truth, and that takes courage, and it also takes an opportunity to want to have a peaceful existence within yourself. It wants to see what God is showing you, what your spirit is showing you, but sometimes we are in denial. I think we can rationalize a lot of things in our lives. And then the other premise of the other A, and this is acknowledgement, being willing to tell yourself the truth. My significant other, I'm engaged now, often says to me, "Don't lie to yourself." And I think that we often, as individuals, we can do that. We can make things be true that we want to be true, and we can rationalize. And this part of coming out means that you have to be willing to tell yourself the truth. And again, that is not an easy thing to do. Oftentimes we know what we should be doing, but we're just not willing to tell ourselves the truth. So this book, this is the premise for the book and the 4A principles. And then acceptance. After you can see, if I was going to go on a diet, the first thing I have to do is become aware I need to go on a diet. That's the first A. The second thing I have to be willing to say, you know what, I'm not eating healthy, right? That is the acknowledgement. And then the third thing is acceptance. I have to be willing to live the truth that I now know. So now that I've learned and I understand these things, now I have to accept this truth. This is true. I am not doing what I need to do for myself. I'm not healthy. I'm not operating the way I need to be operating. I'm operating out of trauma. Now I need to look at this truth and live a truth in a different way. I have to accept this truth for myself. And then the last A is action. And any time you come to these three pillars, then you know that you have to do something different. And that's where wisdom comes in that serenity prayer, the wisdom to know the difference. Now I have this information. Now I have obtained this knowledge within myself. What am I going to do next? And so this coming out process, it's based in the 4A principles that I developed. This is new on the market. It may sound like similar things that we already know, but I don't think it's been coined in this way. And so throughout writing this book, God gave me this concept of the 4A principles, which I think many people can use and are very, again, maybe seem reminiscent to other things, but you have to kind of step through these principles to come out, to reclaim your power and live in your authentic truth. And so that's the premise for the book. And so I walk through that for individuals, but then I start taking us through what I call the coming out process, which is the first step is what I believe is that you can't go forward until you go back. You cannot get to where you need to be until you take a minute to do what I call retrospective analysis, which means you're peering backwards. It's necessary to come forward. It's purposeful. It's intentional. And so for me, I had to make that choice. I had to have the courage. I had to have the awareness. I had to be able to see what I see about myself so I can become unstuck based on my trauma of my past. And so there's some things that I had to do, and I talk about in my book, is that I had to ask tough questions to myself. I had to ask myself, why am I still seeing these behaviors in my life? Why am I not going forward? Why am I still stuck? There is I mentioned this in the book. My mother had a friend, and I've been married before, and he said to me after I was splitting up, he was like, "Have you ever thought the problem was you?" And I was appalled by that question. I was like, "What? How did you ask me this question? Are you crazy?" I was like, "Are you serious?" But what's so funny about that question is that because I was in so much denial, because I didn't want to see, I was focused on him blaming me for the failure of my marriage. But yet, what I should have been focused on, what was it about my life that gave me the propensity to attract someone? My ex-husband had addictions, to put me in this space in my life. I had to ask that question of myself: how did I get here? But I was so busy, not willing to see the truth. I couldn't ask myself that question. So part of your coming out process, you have to be willing to ask yourself the tough questions. And that is a part of that retrospective, that reflective analysis. You have to do your own research of your own self, your own life. And that is what this book talks about in the opening chapters. And for me, and it may look different for everyone, but for me, I had to look at three important things in my childhood, or a course of my life, my childhood, that really shaped my thinking, shaped how I operate as an adult woman, how I operate as a mother, how I operated in my work, in my relationships. And those three areas for me were I was sexually abused as a child. I had lived in a foster home, and my sister died. My sister that was closest to me died. And those three instances for me shaped me in ways that I talk about in the book. I'm coming out of. So coming out of, and so that's the beginning of the coming out process. Really, is be able to take a hard look and ask the tough questions. What are the things that I'm operating from that I'm not even really aware of right now that I'm doing? That is kind of oozing out of my life, but yet I'm willing to see it. Again, it goes back to that premise where I talked about those 4A principles: awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and action. And so I talk about that, and I talk about how I look at those events and how can you create a meaning for that. So if I look at the fact that I was abused as a child, what meaning did that create in my life? Well, one of the things I say and I talk about in the book is how I sacrificed myself for the sake of what I went through, or for the sake of I was in a foster home, and because I experienced being separated from my family, my need for my family was so pronounced I didn't even know it. And so because of that, I sacrificed my own needs, my own self, in light of when I should have been speaking up and having my voice about what I'd been through and saying I need to set some boundaries. I wasn't able to do that because my need to be close to my family was bigger than my need to own my authentic voice and myself, my own power. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good too.
Yes.
And I don't think I'm the only person or woman or man on this earth that has had that experience. And so this this book talks about being aware of what that means. So being abused, one of the things that did for me, that meaning was that I lost the sense of to really channel and deal with my emotions. That there was a period
Mm,
of me that when I was abused, and I mentioned this in the book, that shut down. My emotions
mm,
were lost as I said, look to the abyss, because I was, from that point on, I was living to survive. I wasn't living to know
mm,
Lisa. I wasn't living to
mm,
operate as in her power. I was living to survive what I had been through. And
mm,
so,
mm,
and that is something that I think many of us, it may not be this experience that people have been through, but if you've been through something traumatic in your life, it alters. It alters you, and you have to be really aware of those things. And so I talk about how you take that look backwards, how you ask those tough questions, and then how you look at the meaning that it created in your life. And for me, it created me. I became a person that was, I was good on the outside, but my emotions were so far away from where they
mhm,
need to be. I was not in touch. And so that after we move through this process in the book, I talk about how to reconnect to your emotions, because that's a part of the coming out process. If you have lost a piece of that in your life, you have to come back and reconnect to them, because that makes you whole. We're not whole people if we don't feel.
mhm.
And so, and
Right.
so, so I talk about that. I talk about how we can do that. How, not just about myself, because the book in the beginning talks more about myself, but I talk about how we can make it through that process. So when you look at the abuse, what that did for me, the meaning,
Mhm,
I look at the foster home, what that did for me, and I look at my sister's
mhm,
death, what that meant for me, and so again, a period that shaped me in ways that I felt like in my life that she was one person that I felt that knew me and cared for me. So I felt like I lost that. So there was
mhm,
a grief that I had to deal with in my life that I wasn't able to see until I started going through this process. And so you have to ask yourself, what are these internal messages that we operate from? Because if you think about it, as human beings, as we look, we probably have over, I think, maybe a 10,000 thoughts a day, maybe more than that, within ourselves internally. And so you have to think about, what am I
mhm.
saying to myself every day, all day long? And so
Right.
messages that we speak to ourselves all day long could be contradict whatever else is coming into our minds. And so you have to ask yourself, what's my internal message? What did this experience mean? How have I created a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of thriving based off of that? And so this is why it's important, I believe, in the coming out process, to go back and look at those situations and then say, what meaning did I create for myself? I need to unpack that. I need to understand that. And you have to do that in order to release yourself from it and understand what you're doing in your everyday life. And so the coming out process, so retrospective, reflective analysis, then looking at the meaning of what those things you created from those experiences in your life, and then you move from that. What I do in the book, what I think is helpful, is after each section, I give an opportunity for you to do your own personal work. I feel it's important that we do our work, and so
Mm,
I give after each section an opportunity for you to take time to pause, let me ask, and then do the work with yourself. And I think it's important too, if you've been through anything traumatic, sometimes you can't do this
mhm.
on your own. You may need a therapist, you may need a life coach, you may need a circle of people but it's important to be honest with yourself and know that about yourself, um, as you go through the
Exactly.
process. So I move from the beginning of the book dealing with those things, and then I go into how to reconnect with your emotions. And again, to me, the retrospective, the reflective analysis, reconnecting with your emotions, creating the meaning are all a part of the awareness phase of the 4A principles. You have to be aware of these things about yourself. And so I talk about, how do we cope? What type of coping skills do we have? Do we have avoidant or do we have active? Avoidant was me. I avoided my emotions because, again, I told you, be based off of my sexual abuse trauma. I stopped feeling. I stopped connecting. And so it was
Mhm,
important for this process to reconnect to emotions and understand. And so part of that was being able to do self-care and meditation
mhm,
and mindfulness, and be able to sit still
mhm,
with myself and understand that this is a feeling. It's okay to feel. You know, I think about a lot of times when you think about conversations you have with people and you're talking, you're trying to express yourself, and they say, oh, you know, it's okay, don't worry about that. What I really feel people are doing in those conversations is really saying, don't feel, don't worry about it, just ignore that. And I don't think that's really healthy. I don't mean that we need to just go off on people, right? I don't think we need to like scream and yell, but I think we need to own and face our emotions. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be happy. It's okay, it's okay to identify an emotion and work through it in a healthy way and moving on instead of staying stuck in it or not acknowledging it all. And I think we have to be really careful that we don't do that to people. Kind of we naturally say, oh, it's okay to be okay, and let's this it's it'll be okay, let's move on. No, it's not okay to move on. So part of examining your emotions, your coping behaviors that was formed based off of your history and your coming out process is to be able to deal with it, to sit on it and sit in it. And I think exercise like mindfulness and things like that and meditation help you become center, help you, and I talk about this in the book, help you be able to kind of deal with that feeling, because it can be intimidating for people, and it was for me in the beginning. I work through what I call default programming. And I think, again, our default programming is something I call our natural conversations we have with ourselves. So I think naturally, like I mentioned, we have all these thoughts. We have natural conversations with ourselves. And if you've been naturally communicating in a negative way, you're going to naturally do that. So as you come to this coming out process, you're going to have to fight against that default. Our default is like, when someone you're the doctor's office, when they hit you that little utensil on your knee, your leg bounces back. That's a default. We all have a natural default. And so what you have to learn in your coming out process, and the book talks about, is recognizing that you have a default, that natural conversation you have with yourself, and really work to retrain yourself. I think it's similar to what you do with I think with wellness. You have to retrain yourself, to think way about food, a different way about exercise. You have to retrain yourself to think differently about your emotions, about your experiences, and so you become more healthy. And so the book talks through how to examine your emotions and your coping behaviors that you form based on your experiences in the past, but then how to become more present and how to become connected to those emotions. And so all these things move you through the coming out process. Equally, after you look at your emotions, and I give exercises and I give opportunities for things to make it personal for every person that's reading through the book. I think the thing that was most important for me, and I think is learning to fight for yourself. And the reason I say that is because for most of my life, I had been through what I've been through. I was fighting, right? I was fighting to survive. I was fighting to make sure that, now that I'm an adult, you will hear what I have to say. I have a voice. I was fighting for all these things, but I wasn't fighting for me. I wasn't fighting for me to be healthy. I wasn't fighting for me to grow. I was still staying stuck. And so one of the things that I think that I talk about in the book is fighting for yourself is paramount. You have to love yourself enough to fight for yourself to be healthy in whatever form that looks for you. And so I think that many of us, we as women, I want to say, we're busy taking care of other people. We're busy giving to others, but we're not fighting for ourselves. We neglect ourselves. All of that to me lines up with fighting for yourself. Self-care, self-love, not neglecting your personal needs, knowing what your needs are, and so this to me is the coming up process says, I'm willing to fight for me and I'm willing to fight for Lisa. And I talk about how I had to come to this point where I was willing to fight for me. I was looking for someone to rescue me. From my abuse, I was looking for a man to rescue me. I even had a vision in my mind what that would look like. I was looking for every person that came in my life. You had to rescue me. I may not have said it, but that's what I was looking for. And I had a conversation with a friend, and they were like, you're so busy fighting everything and everybody. She's like, why don't you use that energy for yourself? I'm like, oh. It was one day, and I prayed about that. I said, that's it. I had to come out for my Lisa had
Yeah.
to fight for Lisa. And I had to stop looking for other people to fight for me. I had to fight for me. I was who God gave me to fight for. I was who I was looking for, me. and so yeah, and
That's
that is
good.
what I talk about in the book. You are who you are looking for. We don't recognize how strong and powerful we are because we're so busy operating from
Mm-hmm.
the place of, I don't want to say from weakness, but it's a place of where we've been hurt and abused, or we're looking out of that default program and not seeing our own power and our own strength. And so we are who we are looking for in the book. There's a whole chapter that says fighting for you is paramount. And I think that's important for every person to know and to operate from. And so
Mm-hmm.
I had to come to that discovery for myself um, and to recognize that I wanted something different, I had to create it. if I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
if I wanted to um, have a different type of atmosphere, I had to make that happen. So I went on the journey, and the book talks about of looking at my inner child and addressing my inner child issues and
Mm-hmm.
addressing the young girl who had been hurt, who didn't speak up about her abuse, the teenage girl who thought that she was only worth her body, the young adult woman who was trying to please
Mm-hmm.
everybody. I had to I had to address all of
Mm-hmm.
those aspects of me. And that is the part of
Right.
fighting for yourself. You have to own it and you have to address it. And I had to say, you know what? Now that I'm fighting for me, I have to do things different. I have to look at myself different. And so I
Mm-hmm.
talk about that in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So we move from reconnecting to your emotions, fighting for yourself, and then I spent some time in the book talking about the principles of acceptance and acknowledgement because again, this is the coming to. You have to come. You're coming out. You got to come to, right? You're coming out. You got to come to. There is no just
Right.
coming out to
Right.
just stay out of here in this space of nothingness. You have to come to. And so I spend time talking about how I came out of shame because of the abuse, and I came out of guilt because as a mother I felt because I wasn't aware of myself, there's things I brought into my parentage that I put on my daughter that shouldn't have been
Mm-hmm.
there, and there was some guilt that I had to address. I had to come out of non-forgiveness of myself and
Mm-hmm.
non-forgiveness of others. um, I had to come out. One of the things
Mm-hmm.
I think is really huge for me, and I think maybe other people who've been through any type of abuse or trauma, is the victim mentality. I want to tell you that I
Mm-hmm.
lived like a perpetual victim, and if you and it was so because I didn't even know it. Like if I was having a conversation with you, if I was upset about something, I was gonna call everybody to be my co-signers so I could be the victim and someone else could be, the enemy. And I had to create that in every aspect of my life.
Mm-hmm.
This victim mentality is strong when you've been through abuse because you don't realize that it's not your fault. You take on the ownership of the person who abused you, and now you live as a victim. And so I had to come out of victim mentality. I had to recognize that it wasn't my fault. But on top of that, every part of my life oozed that. If I argued with you, I was going to somehow cleverly, before you knew it, twist it to that you were you were at fault. I was going to in every avenue. If even I had a conversation about something, somewhere in there, my need to be met for a victim was so strong, and I didn't even know it. So when you come out of shame, you come out
Wow.
of victim mentality. That's a piece of growing your power, growing in your voice, growing in your strength. And I had to learn. I talk about a delicate flower. I think that on the outward, you looked at me and you said, "Oh, she's accomplished. She has it all together." But on the inside, I was
Mm-hmm.
breaking, and
Mm-hmm.
and it was oozing in everywhere. And I thought I was masking it, but it was oozing. It was oozing them as a mother, it was oozing in my relationship, it was
Wow.
oozing at work. And I thought I was doing this wonderful job of trying to mask that. But in your coming out process, in my coming out process, I recognized I had to own that I operate as a victim. I had to release myself from that. And I have to do that every day because, mind you, I've lived most of my life this
Mm-hmm.
way. So every day I have to
Right.
caution myself, or people in my life have to remind me, okay, yep, so you have to. I talk about as in the book. This is a lifelong process. You have to keep coming out. As you learn one area about yourself, you grow to learn another area that you need to come out in and grow. And so, coming out of shame, coming out of victim mentality, that pathology thinking, and learning how to operate in a different way. So I talk about that in the book. Um, then, like I said, I come to coming to, which I like, because I had to come to self-love, and I had to come to self-acceptance, and really taking the time to talk to, as I mentioned earlier, Lisa. Lisa's a young girl, stand in the mirror, look myself in my eyes, look at myself in the soul, and say, Lisa, I love you. The little girl in you, I love you. Lisa, the teenage girl, I love you too. Lisa, the young adult woman, I love you. Lisa, who you are today, I love you. And I had to practice that over and over again. Really, I will say to you, because of the default, because of the years of fighting against that belief and understand self-love for myself, I had to say that, and I would recommend anyone until your spirit is willing to receive it. Because in the beginning, I think your spirit will reject it, and you have to continue to tell yourself this truth. Because at the end of the day, God loves us, and if He didn't, we wouldn't exist. So the mere fact that we live and breathe is an element of God's love for us every single day. And it doesn't mean our lives are going to be perfect, but it doesn't mean that God's love is not freely given to us. And one of the things that you do in this coming to process of self-love, you recognize and you accept that God loves you. And He has given His love freely to you. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to do anything for it. But the thing you have to do is be open to receive it. And so the book talks about that type of love, and accepting that love from God, accept that love for yourself, and then self-acceptance, and not being willing to sacrifice or compromise yourself for. So I will say this, with with my family, I had to create boundaries because I was so busy wanting to do these things for them to love me instead of looking for a prize in my actions. They had no idea. They didn't know. I mean, I wasn't asking for them and verbal with my power, my own voice. I was just doing activities and being there for them and exhausting myself until I realized, I'm like, hold on, I'm neglecting. And so I had to create these boundaries in my relationship, even with my sisters and brothers, and that's healthy, to be healthy. So I had to, so self love and self acceptance brought me to that realization for myself. And so the book just walks through all these elements: self love, self acceptance, like I mentioned, to and coming to and coming out of is a lifelong practice. It's a lifelong principle. And I think that for many of us, if we have any place where we have areas where we're stuck or areas where we want to grow, I think the coming out, how to reclaim your power and live in your authentic truth, create life impact, will help you. I really believe that life impact starts with the person. As you create within yourself, now every person that you interact with, you're going to create life impact with them, because you're oozing, your power, you're oozing authenticity, and they're going to glean something from that because you are operating in that. And so I believe it starts with individuals. We honor and value ourselves. The book talks about that, and you create life impact one person at a time. And so my goal for the book is that each person would want to start with themselves, to look internally, to walk through their process. So if you walk through reflective, retrospective analysis, you connect with the meaning of those things, you identify those, you connect with your emotions, you, I don't want to make sure I give you the next section before I move past that process. Excuse me.
This is good, girl.
I'm
I'm
trying
like,
to
wow.
remember it all. I'm like, something is not. I have to look back at the chapters. Let me just see here.
But don't give them everything. They need to buy the book and read it. Don't give them everything.
That is right. You're
They
right.
need to.
So I will close with this, as I think that for the book, one of the things I
Mhm.
think is important, that each person give themselves a second chance. You might have had some areas where you feel you made a mistake. You might have feel like you didn't live up to what you need to be, or whatever that is, how you do yourself. Everybody's worthy of a second chance. And I think the second chance starts with ourselves, our relationship with ourselves, and then we move forward to the relationship with other people. It has to be internal before it can be external. It doesn't mean anything unless it's within. And so this book, I hope, creates hope and power for anyone who has the opportunity to read it. So there it is.
I really I love what you just said. I'm actually gonna after I'm gonna inbox you so you can send me my signed copy. And I mean, that's good. That's good. We need that because we forget, especially as a female, we forget ourselves. We never fight for ourselves. We let ourselves go because we're mom, we're a single parent, like you said. Even if we have a husband, we still run the house. You know, it's just we take on.
Yes.
We have so many hats, and we suppress everything. We let everything just fall by the wayside because one day we're gonna get to it. One day we're gonna get to it.
Yeah.
One day we'll get to ourselves. One day we'll take care of ourselves, and that day never come
That's
if we
correct.
don't make
That's
it
correct.
happen.
It has to be intentional. It has to be. And I
So,
think we live in and I'll be honest, because sometimes because we come from the Christian community where it's, you deny yourself. But denying yourself doesn't mean you don't love yourself. You
mhm,
don't in the sense of not love yourself where there's prideful love, but you have to
mhm,
take care of yourself. How can you take care of someone else if you don't take care of yourself? And I think we kind of have that mentality that we can't give anything to ourselves. But that is what makes sense, because then you have nothing left to give if you're depleted. You know what I mean? You have nothing else to offer if you're depleted. So the
exactly.
concept doesn't make sense in itself. So not to contradict the word of God, that's not what I'm saying.
Mhm.
I'm saying it because you look at Matthew and he says, love thy neighbor as thyself. He says, honor your father. I'm going to Matthew. He talks about the first commandment is to love thy neighbor as yourself, love the Lord God, with all your heart, mind, and soul, then love your neighbor as yourself. Well, you think about that in the essence, how do I love my neighbor as myself? I don't even love myself. So how can I give my neighbor
Right,
anything? And
right.
so I think sometimes we lose the sight of that means in practical terms, and so it was important. and
Mhm.
i and I think for me, because I was so heavily involved in the church, I was doing so much, I wasn't giving anything to myself. And so that's why it was so important to talk about
Mhm.
that to talk about that. So
Yeah, I think you did a great job. I can't wait to read it. One, tell us how we can get the book. Where your
oh,
give us your social media so
sure.
people can
So the
reach
book
out
is
to you.
available at Amazon.com. um, just put in the title, Coming Out, How to Reclaim Power and Live Your Authentic Truth to Create Life Impact, is in Kindle version and paperback. You can reach me at lifeimpactcircles.com. That's the website for, and I failed to mention that me and my daughter are co-CEOs or co-founders to Life Impact Circles Coaching, which we do relationship coaching. And so I'm available on the website. You can reach me on Instagram, and make sure I'm giving you the right handle, at Life Impact CC. And you can reach me on Facebook at the same Life Impact CC on Facebook as well. So any of those places you can reach out to me for, if you want coaching, if you want speaking, if you want a copy of the book, any of those things, I'm available for all of them. So thank you.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I can't wait to get my copy. I cannot wait to read it, to share it. Actually, I'm gonna, people will get to hear this. And I'm just glad you did it. I'm
Sure.
glad you did it. Now, one last question. Is there another
I
book
think so.
in the making?
I've been toying with some different ideas, but I don't think this will be the last. But one book, I may go towards the more spiritual lines in my next book, because I've been working on some stuff, discovering God's love for yourself, and so maybe in that realm, or maybe another
Mhm.
pickup to, I think, the next steps of the coming out process. So yes, it is. Just don't have not fully actualized how it's gonna look. So yeah.
Will keep us in tune for that. And, I'll
Yes,
be
I will.
connected anyway. So I'm so grateful for you. I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Congratulations
Thank you.
on the
Thank you.
engagement
I'm excited too.
and on you. Oh, I know you are, girl. And it's a beautiful
Yes, it
thing
is.
the second time around. Especially, especially when you when you have found yourself,
Oh,
and I can
yeah.
attest to that.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a beautiful thing. So congratulations, and congratulations on this book. I'm really proud of you. Thank you
Thank
for
you for
taking the
having me.
time
I
to do this
appreciate it. It's an
interview.
honor. I'm so excited for you as well. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Well, have a great evening.
You too, and stay
Happy
safe,
Easter
okay?
weekend.
Bye.
You too, cuz. Thank you, Audie.
Have you heard about Anchor? It is the easiest way to start a podcast. Let me explain. It is free and has creation tools to help you record and edit from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many more. Plus, you can earn money with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to get started. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Have you heard about Anchor? It is the easiest way to start a podcast. Let me explain. It is free and has creation tools to help you record and edit from your phone or computer. Anchor will also distribute your podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and many more. Plus, you can earn money with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to get started. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.